Welcome to Hot Takes, brought to you by 50cupstea.com, where united we sip, discuss, and learn. Join us as we dive into the hottest takes on culture, business trends, and the threads that bind us. Get ready for inspiring stories, candid conversations, and a fresh perspective on living a healthy, fulfilled life. Grab your cup and tune in. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bill LeMay, and we are here with Mr. Jim Baker. And yes, you're right. It is another episode of the 50 Cups Hot Takes. Jim, it is so good to see you.
You as well, my friend. Today I have a little de-stress tea for us.
Good.
Brewed this morning. As you can see, though, it's a nice warm day, but we have a little ice malfunction, so we're going to have to go iceless.
Oh, that's fine.
We'll just pretend like we're maybe in the UK back in the 70s.
Oh, very good. The
60s.
Warm beer. Yeah, warm tea.
Hopefully you'll find the taste enjoyable, as always.
I've yet to hit a bad tea, Jim, honestly. And
well,
this is
since you had a
wonderful.
flat tire or a nail on your tire on the way here today, I figured the de-stress might be apropos for yourself.
It was quite high, and the left lane was full, and they were in no hurry. Just put it that way.
Yeah.
So I was afraid I'd be a little late, but no, that's wonderful. That's a great tasting tea. How do people get your tea?
As always, the website, 50cupstea.com.
Good.
And
That's so easy.
Yeah, anytime you want to log in, we're happy to help you out.
Please do that. Please do that. I don't know how you want to start today.
Yeah, so I want to reverse the tables today.
I
want to actually
uncomfortable.
interview you. As I said, I think a couple of podcasts ago, I do have a core group of listeners of maybe three. But they all love you. Like, hey, where'd you get this guy from? And he's like, professional. And I said, well, he actually is. And he's got a phenomenal background. And I thought, in fairness to the audience, it would be good for you to share your story with us today. So today, you're actually going to get interviewed. I'm going to do the interviewing, of course, not as good as you would ever do it. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about your hot takes at the appropriate time and go on and have a lot of fun today.
All right, and I got tea. No blue M&Ms, but I'll deal with it.
You're good to go.
Well, what do you want to know?
Yeah, so
I'm
Bill
not that
LeMay,
interesting.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. You're from North Carolina originally. What'd you do when you were a kid? Just start from the ground up, so to speak.
Well, I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And a minute out of the womb, I said, who the hell wants to live here? It is so cold. But Green Bay is a wonderful little town. You got a football team there. So I grew up Catholic and Green Bay Packer fan. And that has remained true my entire life. And as a kid, I wasn't much for school. Actually, I wasted my years. And we took the Iowa Basic Skills Test at that time. And I came back as being qualified to be a bag keeper. I don't even know what that is, but it must have been horrible for my mom. And so when I graduated, and the principal said, I really can't believe you're graduated, but congratulations. I was kind of at a loss of what to do. And I did know the manual labor thing wasn't my thing, but I fell in love with radio. And at that time, you may remember that radio was kind of a big deal. You had local celebrities. It was really fun, not like today where it's more a music box than anything else. So I was lucky enough to get some radio gigs, and I was just talking to our producer, and I said, it's so hard to find people who are willing to work. I remember cleaning bathrooms. I would sleep overnight in the studio just to be able to get on the microphone, the next day for, an hour.
Yeah, so what kind of studio was it? Was it local in Green Bay, I assume? And was it news? Was it weather? Was it everything? Was it music?
I did all of that just to get eventually to a point where I could get a show. Now, this was the point where AM became more obsolete. FM came in, so it was a good time for me to get on an FM signal, and it just went big. And for me, that was wonderful. It was a station I ran, but I did mornings, and you became a local celebrity.
Were you a comedian back then?
I tried to be funny. Yeah. Yes, I did.
What was your stick in the morning?
Just being awake, usually. It was just, I'm not a morning person, but it was a top 40 station. Okay. So we brought in a lot of concerts, and so we got to meet a lot of the bands and do that stick. And with radio, like anything else, you tend to age out. So you go from top 40 and then eventually maybe over to classic hits. Maybe you can get rock in there for a while. And then eventually you're looking at a light, soft music, yacht music station unless you make a change. And the other known fact from all radio disc jockeys is you never take vacation. And the reason for that is someone will take your job. And that happened to me in the reverse this time. There was somebody on the talk show, and he went on vacation. And they said, you want to try? And I said, sure, why not? And I did. And I thought, my goodness, people would actually listen to my opinion. And at that time, it wasn't a very wise opinion, but I loved it. And I kind of stuck with it throughout the rest of my radio career. But I've done...
And was the format just anything at that time, or...
The talk radio station...
Yeah, was it conservative? Was it liberal? Was it politics? Was it not politics?
Yeah, all of those things. And I wasn't either. I didn't know anything about politics. So we went with... I'm not sure what we went with, but eventually somebody came... some county supervisors came to meet with me and said, did you know? And that's the first time I had an opportunity to see behind the scenes and the fraud and the dirt and everything that is associated with politics, whether it be on a local scale all the way up to the national level. And that really opened my eyes. So we got quite involved in that. And from there, we developed a pretty good listenership. Eventually, I was fired from there.
All right, let me take you back for a second, though.
Sure.
I'm a football fan.
Yeah.
And one of my bucket list things is to
Lambeau
go to
Field.
Lambeau and see a game. I know it's a lot different now than it probably was when you were growing up, but could you walk to the stadium?
Oh, pretty much. Pretty much you could.
And did you go to games?
Oh, yeah. Well, we had to. Let me because
my dad made me go.
No, my dad didn't. But we, as a part of the radio package, you had to go and do the tailgates, and then you'd get field passes, and you'd sit on the bench. Mm-hmm. And we would go. I'd take my son or whatever, and we'd do that tailgating. We'd sit for the first half, and sideline seats aren't that great on the field, but it's an awesome feeling. And by halftime, we said, well, let's just go home. So we get in the car and we go, and we'd sit down, open up a beer before the second half would even start. That's how small the city is. But it was a wonderful experience. And of course, everybody's very much pro-Packer fan. They just had a draft, of course, in Green Bay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story.
Yeah, how'd they do that, by the way? Where'd they put all those people?
I don't know. It went all the way. You had these Appleton, Oshkosh, Fond du Lac.
Okay.
They went, 60 miles out to find hotel rooms, I'm sure. My sister, who is just cute as a bug and bubbly, just a great person. You instantly meet her and you fall in love with her. She got a job with Mike McCarthy, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. And he said to her, now, are there any questions you have? And she said, do I have to know anything about football? Now, you have to understand, Jim, I'm a lifelong Packer fan. I would die for Green Bay Packer football. She worked there. She's got 2 Super Bowl rings and didn't know anything about football. So it's just amazing how life goes, you know? So,
and then during your band days, any band stories, any cool bands you met? Who'd you like the best?
Oh, well, we did so many. And the thing about it was the rock bands like Van Halen and Alice Cooper and all the big names at that time. In fact, REO Speedwagon, you remember that band?
Yeah, sure. Heard it from a friend.
There was, right. And riding the storm out, man. And they'd come and they'd rock. And I got to know Sean Cronin, who's the brother of Kevin Cronin. He was the local weekend weather guy on a local station there. And he said, do you want to go? His parents were coming up from Chicago. He was the adopted child, and he was starved for attention. And so we rode in a limo to the concert, and Sean is out in the crowd with her parents are going nuts over Kevin, of course, because he's up on stage and rocking and rolling. It's almost as though they looked at, who are you? Why are you with us? So I felt so bad for him. But for the most part, most of it was boring. You had all the groupies trying to get backstage to get with the band. They usually had blue M&Ms, that people took good care of them there, but no wild, crazy stories. I mean, they'd come out I don't know how they played because they were so, high, and they would party, a lot of them. They also had a Las Vegas showroom in Green Bay, and they'd bring in a lot of national acts, but of all genres, comedians and bands. So you got to do a lot of that. So it was an interesting period. And then I got fired again. And I'm serious. It's my first time I got fired.
How do you get fired? Just you say something bad against the ownership, or your ratings start going down, they toss you out? Like how does one get fired?
I was very, this is a life learning lesson. I was full of myself because I was on a station. It was the most listened to in the country. And I didn't want anybody to touch that and mess with it. And the boss wanted to sell more ads on it, so we kind of went back and forth. And then they had promotions you had to do, and one was getting up early and driving a Dr. Pepper truck and handing out little free samples. And I didn't want to do it. And I was pretty obnoxious about it on the air. And that was a humbling experience, Jim. And I now understand why the boss wanted to sell more time. At that point, I don't think I was a capitalist, I guess, more of a liberal.
So you more like an Imus or a Howard Stern at that point?
I don't know what I was, honestly. But we were rocking and rolling, and I was bad. If I were to go back and listen to the tapes, I was not very good at all. But that's what you can be a big fish in a small pond sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that's when I moved on to talk radio. And, with that company, come to think of it, I've been fired 3 times and hired back. So that says something. Opened up a recording studio in Green Bay on one of those times, and we recorded bands, and opened up another one in Colorado where we did movies.
And at this point in time, are you married, kids, all that?
Yeah, I had the absolute track record, the plan for failure. I got my first wife pregnant, and I was young and unskilled. Didn't pay attention to school, so all the points, you would have for success, I just ignored them. So it was a bit of a struggle, and radio doesn't pay very well, certainly in small markets. Excuse me, I got to get some tea.
Have some tea.
May I have some tea? And it's warm. I get choked up talking about myself, Jim. So I did that, and it was a fun period. It really was. And it was a very hard period, too. Always struggling for money. Then, as I said, moved on to Colorado, where we did movies and national car spots. And
where were you in Colorado?
Colorado Springs.
Okay.
It was
a nice area here.
Oh, it's beautiful. Really is. Then Californians moved in and just ruined the state, and I moved back to Wisconsin. But it was an opportunity to learn again a skill that I didn't have, and that was doing sound design and for movies. And they were B movies. They weren't very good movies, but you can check them out. I think one was RoboCop.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, you may have heard. It was, I think, voted the worst movie of the year by
Are you in the credits if you watch to the end?
Sure.
Wow,
sure.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Elves, Laser Moon, and oh God, even I forgot the titles. They were very bad movies, but it was a lot of fun to do the Foley work and sound design on them, and it gave me, again, experience to go on to other things. So then I got a divorce.
And are you back in Wisconsin at this point in time, or are you still in Colorado?
I'm still in Colorado, but then I got a divorce,
Okay.
and they took my Corvettes away, and and the kids. Anyway, I went back to Green Bay.
All right.
And they put me on a light station.
And where'd your ex-wife go? Did she stay in Colorado?
Still in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Things worked out pretty well, don't you think, Jim?
Yeah, for her. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty well. And at a light station, and I remember how embarrassed I was.
Now you're doing like dental music?
Yeah, like, music, boring, can't keep your eyes open music. And
Dan Fogelberg, things like that.
Yeah. And again, it's among the peers that I worked with. And so it was humbling, but I did it because I wanted to be back there. And then I talked the boss into putting me back on the talk station. And then from there it took off. And until I was eventually fired again by...
How many years before you got fired again?
Oh, I think there was usually, I worked for, after the initial firing and I'm getting back in, I'd usually hang on for about a year or so. And that's where I do amazing things. I got fired because, well, that doesn't sound humble, but I mean, we did do amazing things. They wanted me to be the news director, and I didn't want to do that. It was not my thing, but I said, the Iraq War had just broken out, and the 432nd from that area was deployed. And we were hearing how all the troops were not fit. They didn't have the supplies. They didn't have toothpaste and all those things. And I said, well, I'm going to email the colonel. And I said, can I come? I will bring stuff. And he said, well, they're shooting RPGs at us every day, but yeah, if you want to. And we figured out a way, and we had fundraisers. We bought all these supplies. We shipped them over. And I followed with letters from home, and we're going to do a show from there. In fact, we were the first radio show to do that.
Wow.
And as I was flying in, I was sitting next to a Middle Eastern guy, and this is, Jim, I'm dumb. I'm a young, never been anywhere out of the country kind of guy. And he's ragging on Bush. And, well, at this point, I had been indoctrinated, and I was defending Bush, and he left. He left me in the seat, which gave me that extra seat, because I don't fly first class on that. I am in coach. And it's like a 15-hour flight. And Saddam, they caught Saddam Hussein that weekend when I landed, which was kind of cool. I didn't know about it till we got to the airport in Germany, I think. But we got there, and at that time, the Americans were treated as liberators. and it was a pretty good time. Although, for me, it was life changing because again, one of the things they told me, Jen, was the Vietnam vets particularly said, wherever the flag is, that's your home. So if you're ever in trouble, go there and never, ever give up your passport. So I land late at night in Kuwait, and the first thing they did was take my passport. And I didn't know if they were coming back. Eventually they did, and I hooked up, and now it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and my friends from Green Bay, they took me back to the base in Kuwait, and they had the Green Bay Packer game on. They were playing live. So, at that time, technology was starting to make it easier for them. But it was something. I mean, the people, the poverty, the buildings that were blowing up, the death squads that they openly recognized, the 432nd did, but didn't stop for them, would be pulling people over on the highway. And the deal was you never stopped. You just, if someone would be in front of you in a car, you just ram them and go. So it was very, very interesting. And you got me talking about one of the scariest moments for me. You remember the swords in Baghdad? Well, you can climb up in them. And at this point, capitalism was taking over, and you had the locals charging you money to go up in them. And I was filming this, and you go in, and then it's completely black. I mean, it's not like stairs. It's not like the Statue of Liberty. You're climbing up this stuff, and he's gone. He's absolutely gone. And in my mind, I'm going, what's going to happen? Am I going to find my way out? Are they waiting for me? Is this it? I've seen the live footage, but it had a happy ending. But it was the first time I realized, you know what, this really is kind of serious stuff. It never really dawned on me that I could be hurt or killed or anything like that. But it was a wonderful experience. And to have the people back home be able to talk to their loved ones at that time, it wasn't an easy thing to do, and they were able to do it. It was really, really awesome. And then I got back, and they said, "You want the job?" I said, "No, I don't want that," and they fired me.
Wow. Yeah. So how long were you in Iraq? Just like a weekend, or was it a week?
No, the first time it was a week.
Okay.
And that stint got me the job at WPTF in Raleigh.
Yeah, so then how do you go from Wisconsin to Raleigh?
Well, I knew I was going to be fired.
Okay.
Like, you get that sense after a while, it's...
Stop talking to you?
Yeah, you just get that sense. They seemed offended when I turned down their news director's job. So I started applying, and it just worked out for the first time since they fired me so often. I got the job. They fired me the day before, but I finally accepted the offer in Raleigh. And it was the tape from Iraq that got me that gig. And then that was the second time they sent me to the PTF. Was wonderful because we were a very powerful station, very successful station. We were also a mouthpiece for the Republican Party. I was still pounding the drum, and that gave us all kinds of opportunities to go to Iraq, to go to Gitmo, to go to the White House and all these kinds of things, something that somebody from Green Bay, somebody like me, would never have an opportunity to do.
And were you a morning, midday, evening?
I was
positioned.
I was afternoons.
Okay.
And it was in a very nice spot. I had Rush Limbaugh before me and Sean Hannity after me. And so it was wonderful for about 10 years. And then the company made some changes and things went south.
So what was Gitmo like?
Gitmo was interesting. I got a call and developed a relationship with a woman from the Pentagon. And she calls up and says, "You want to go to Gitmo?" And I said, "Well, who doesn't, right?" And so drove to Washington, got on a general's jet. And it's pretty decked out. I think it's like it's almost, I guess, a 737 type. It was a pretty good size.
Nice jet for a private.
Well, yeah. Tour. And it had big screen TVs and the lazy boys. It was pretty nice. Huh? It was really nice. And there was 4 others. And we flew. And I remember coming and I didn't know what to expect. I thought Cuba, tropical, is going to be palm trees and all of that. And we landed, and it was a very short runway. And so it was a pretty interesting landing, but it was beautiful, but it's a desert, and I didn't know that. And Gitmo was like, I was expecting to see, the waterboarding, the interrogation rooms, and they showed me an interrogation room. It had a lazy boy again, and it had Xboxes, and they would bring in fast food for the folks to get them to talk. I'm sure that there was some BS and all of that, but I'm sure they had other rooms. But they were basically in a dormitory type situation, unless they were very bad. So you'd have 20 guys in a dorm room, and they would plot to get the soldiers. And oftentimes they did. They had a soccer field. I mean, they weren't treated like I heard the news reports suggest. The soldiers all had their names blocked out. They would not let the detainees look at us. The minute we came in, they turned them around, put them up against the wall. But the island itself seemed like normal life except for that, and it was like the county jail for the bad guys. So and you'd have call to prayer. They were very respectful. They showed us how they force-fed those who were on a hunger strike. It was fascinating. It really was. But it was just a quick day jaunt, and then we were back in Washington.
How big is that place? How many can they hold?
Boy, I used to know that number. I'm not certain what it was. I know they added the jail facility in addition to what they had, so I'm not going to speculate, but quite a few.
I always wonder, too, is that our territory or is that we lease that from Cuba?
It's my understanding we got the deal to refuel their ships there. That's why, even though we don't need it, we continue to do so, which means the lease continues.
Okay.
And I don't think that's been challenged. You can hear on the other side of the gates, pretty good party going in the evening, evidently. I don't know if there were Hollywood stars there or not at that time, but it was just a fascinating contrast of what you see on television and what you actually see in real life. And you got to take it with a grain of salt, too,
Sure.
What they're
And then when you went back to Iraq, what was the difference?
Ooh, that was difference.
That time compared to the first time?
This was not as nearly as much fun. It was better accommodations. I went for 2 weeks. Went with the Pentagon, which gave us access to anywhere and everywhere. It was we couldn't even get to where we wanted to go because of the sandstorms initially, and then we went in the middle of the night during a sandstorm, which is when the Iraqis or whoever they were at that time would attack. And we made it, and from that point on, we went to Fallujah, we went to Ramadi, we went to all over Iraq and Baghdad. We eventually made it to Baghdad in the palace of Saddam Hussein. And he had a man-made lake, and it was sand. It was just beautiful. The palace itself was somewhat bombed out, but still usable. And he had a house of prostitution that was pretty sweet, and that's where we bunked. And, I saw G. Gordon Liddy. You know who he is?
Yeah.
I saw him naked. He bunked with me, 80-year-old man.
He's since passed.
He has since passed.
He was your roommate, huh?
At that time. And I said, boy,
nice.
He's an old man. And I'm going,
what was his personality like? Did the media portray him different than what he really was?
I thought he was a cool dude. I really did. He was a big star, so he had a handler with him that kind of took care of everything he did.
What was he doing there?
What I was doing, same thing.
Okay. Oh, so he was in the press at that point.
Yeah, so he was sleeping with us and going through all the motions and broadcasting from there as well. And he was just an interesting guy. Of course, he's infamous for, Watergate and all that stuff. But if you were in the brothel, it was decked out as you would expect, Middle Eastern decor to be gaudy. Mm-hmm. And there were these pieces of art. I got a picture of it. It's a vase. Now, I don't know. I don't speak Arabic. But underneath it, supposedly, according to the folks there, that says, for a good time, call. And I didn't call, so I can't verify that. But it was an amazing place.
So that palace then, obviously, you went the first time Saddam was caught.
Yeah.
So this time Saddam's not around anymore.
No.
So was it just a hotel now for people visiting?
It was a base of operation for the, it would be the army out of that palace.
Okay.
And they ran their operation through there. And if you had an opportunity to walk around, you would see a lot of bombed out things, but you'd also see like the swords, the things they tore down and that they still kept. We were embedded with the Iraqi First Army, and that was on an old British base that was very much like you'd see in the 30s movie, that kind of architecture. And we spent time with them, and they'd chop food for us. They'd take a lamb out and slaughter it right there on the concrete and cook it up the way they cook it up. And it was actually very, very good. But a whole different lifestyle, Jim. And we saw people who were living in the Baghdad dump, a family of like 5, 6 kids, and they were waving and smiling. And at the same time, we needed air cover to get to other areas where you were afraid you were going to be shot at by snipers, and they'd come in and just blow them up. So
are you recording your segments there, and then they broadcast later, or are you recording live?
Well, the first time I was live.
Okay.
The second time they didn't want to do it live, so we recorded segments.
So you're calling the shots again?
I wasn't calling any shots.
Well, you said you didn't want to do it live.
I did want to do it live.
Oh, you did?
I did.
They told you not to?
Yeah,
Okay.
For whatever reason.
I got it.
And they transport us with, in fact, when you flew in, because it was so much more dangerous and they didn't particularly like us any longer, you'd fly in and you'd do a cartwheel down about as fast as you could. And oftentimes, and I know when I was flying in the helicopters, they let those flares go. I don't know if there was somebody shooting at us or they were just messing with us, but so you had those moments, and it was kind of like, wow, things have changed a lot from the first trip, but they were better prepared, and they had certainly hardcover Humvees and things like that. But I had to get on to go to another base and by myself again, and I forgot my ear plugs, and they didn't have any, so I said, well, I'll put my fingers in them. And after a while, you don't really need to put your fingers in anymore, I said to myself, so I didn't. But I couldn't hear where the stop was, so I did a complete tour of Iraq before they found me and popped me off. But I couldn't hear. Jim, I couldn't hear and I still, that's what ruined my hearing.
Wow.
I got off and I couldn't talk to anybody because I couldn't hear them. It was pretty scary.
At least you got a tour.
I did. It was very nice. You got to see the landscape.
Here's a hot take on some 50 Cups tea.
The Immune Booster tea helps your body to fight off disease due to its carefully crafted ingredients. It contains peppermint and spearmint, which strengthen the immune system and fight bacteria. Ginger, which fights disease through its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Echinacea, which modifies the immune system. Elderberry, which contains vitamin C, phenolic acids, flavonols, and anthocyanins, which modulates the body's immune response. And it also contains oregano, which has powerful antibacterial properties.
Visit 50cupstea.com to find out more.
So when you're flying into Baghdad at that point, are you flying commercial into Baghdad? Or
No.
are you
You'd fly into Kuwait, and then from there
like on Delta or something? And then and then from there they transport you into the country?
they take a military vehicle and get you in. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So a couple questions on your ratings are good.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume that you can't renegotiate your contract when your ratings are sky high. You have to wait till the term's over. And so is there like a trick in the radio world where you try to, peak your ratings at the same time you're trying to get a new contract? Like, how does that work?
Now, I'm sure when you get to the next level, and I thought I was going to go, I really thought, but that's a whole different ballgame. For the industry itself, even when it was very popular, very low paying jobs, you did it more for the love and maybe the fame, I guess, on a local level. It's very difficult to make real money until you get into a market like Raleigh, and that's really the first time I started to make decent money. Mm-hmm. And then you get the next big step, to the national level, doing Fox, or I was doing hits with MSNBC and things like that. I thought, geez, we're almost there, and that would have made all the difference, make some big money. But we did have an opportunity to make news on a fairly regular basis. We had Mitt Romney in the studio, Mitt Romney's son in the studio, and like we do, we talk beforehand, and he got very comfortable. And I just asked him, because if you may recall that President Obama was making statements about Mitt Romney, and I just said off the cuff, I said, well, does that ever get you mad? I mean, he's lying about your dad. Oh, yeah, he said, I just want to get up and punch him right in the head. Well, that went national. And I don't know if you remember it, but it went crazy stupid. And so those kinds of things are the moments you live for as a radio personality.
Yeah. This is before social media, too.
Well, yeah.
Imagine if it was today.
Oh, I know. I know. So we had a lot of fun. I did. I look back and say, wow.
So then the station gets sold?
Well, no, it's still owned by Mr. Curtis, but it went, The toughest thing for me was I was doing the show, and the consultant for the radio station working with the personalities was a far leftist
person.
Yes. So what you normally do in the business is you'll go over an air check, which is you'll scope an hour of your work, and you'll sit down with somebody who's supposed to be brilliant and tell you where you should improve. Mm-hmm. My air check generally started with the first break, and from there it was politics. He was telling me how wrong I am until it was time to leave. So it worked out pretty well. But eventually they made some decisions that, ruined the station in regards to ratings. They're not what they used to be. But, right. It's all business, man. It always is.
And then after that, you go to TV?
Yeah, well, I've been doing TV for a while. Yeah, we do a television show on CW22 and MyRDC. It's a public affairs program. It's not as spicy as the radio program, but it's nice. And I do a lot of radio imaging and that sort of thing. So I'm still working. We adopted a baby 9 years ago, and
remarried.
Yeah. Kids are all here, so. It keeps it going, which means I got to keep working.
But I'm saying after the last radio gig,
yes,
when they changed the format or whatever,
yes.
Did you stay in radio after that? Or did you?
I would do some remote broadcasting and host from my home for like Green Bay and some other things. It got to the point where people really like you to be there, be part of the community, and I understand that. And I didn't want to move at this point. There was a station group in Wisconsin, very liberal group, who bought a bunch of stations. And I was talking to them. They wanted a different perspective to improve their listenership. And I turned it down, but ultimately, their goal was to change the minds of individuals to vote for a Democrat, for instance. And it was, again, outside what I felt was good for anybody.
Sure.
So other than that, man, I've washed my hands of radio at this point because I've chosen to stay here.
Do you think radio, it's got a little niche right now? Do you think it stays that way, or do you think it comes back down the road?
I don't see how it comes back. Obviously, people are still tuning in, but not in great numbers. I work with a distributor of product for radio stations, and ad revenue is way down. Personalities now are really not there in radio unless very few exceptions in bigger markets. So you don't have the star, you don't have the draw, and quite honestly, the plethora of places you can go to get entertainment, news, and what have you, it's available at your fingertip. It's very tough, but they're still trying. TV's in the same boat,
I know. It's just it's so much as a listener. You just want to listen to something like a show, podcast, and you can fast forward through the commercials.
Right.
And there's not that many of them anyhow, but radio, I mean, you can't even change the dial anymore because no matter where you change to, there's a commercial going on. Well, I get it. They have to survive.
I think it's a cabal. They all get together and say, okay, at 12 after, we're all going to play all our 8 minutes worth of spots.
Yeah.
But at the same time, kids still tune in. My daughter cranks the tunes. And
does she?
So,
not on Spotify yet?
Yeah, I get her on that, and she's banned from YouTube and things like that. We try to, there's a lot of stuff out there. You got to be very careful.
Yeah.
But I would like to think so. I mean, it was such a lot of fun. And I think radio, and one of the reasons I did talk radio is I could see the difference. You could, as an individual, make a difference in the community. But I also took great care to make sure that I had the facts before I would sit down and rave about anything. It's not to say I couldn't be wrong, and there have been times I've been wrong.
Yeah.
But that's not what you're getting today. So it can be also very dangerous if you get people who buy into it. So
if you look back, I mean, obviously you were ingrained in the Green Bay community and now the Raleigh community. What are the differences in the community? Not necessarily from a geographical perspective, but just from the people. I know this is more of a transient area, but just...
Yeah, no, it's Green Bay's much more blue collar, which makes them, I think, more conservative by nature, just because of who they are and how they were brought up. Very religious, Catholic, roll up your sleeves, let's get together. The other outlying areas like Madison and Milwaukee, which is very liberal, which I would compare to more Raleigh. area, unless you get to the outskirts. You know, we live out in Zebulon now, and they're very conservative out there. So you get outside of the urban areas, and you find the same kind of folks. But yeah, Green Bay is, I don't know. They were such a small town kind of feel. I remember going to the Y as a kid with my dad, and we were swimming with Bart Starr and his kids, kind of a thing. It was that kind. You wouldn't be able to do that in most other cities. So you got that kind of mindset going. They take care of their own. Not that we don't, but this one feels almost too big to participate sometimes.
So you look back on your career. I mean, what are some of the? This isn't the time, by the way, you espouse your wisdom on everybody. But
you going to play this at some event in the future?
What are some of the lessons you learned along the way?
I learned this, and this is to everyone who listens. You're replaceable. You're not indispensable. You can be replaced like this, and the world will not skip a beat. So learn humility. And I learned humility a couple of times, and it made me, I think, I hope, a better person. And I also learned that as hard as you work, and for those things in life, maybe it's a bigger house or car or whatever it is, keeping up with the neighbors, it's really not worth it. Not worth it. It's not what's important in life. I would say, not to get religious on you, open the Bible, start reading that. Don't find that part of your wisdom late in life. If you wait and you miss out, that's really a problem. But explore those things. Try to figure out what's important for you. And I think I've been to a number of funerals lately, and I've yet to see a pile of cash or a car that's going with anybody. But I do see a lot of people who love you that are there and mourning you. And will you come to mine? I just want to start padding the numbers now. I think that's important,
to
make a difference in people's lives that they want to show up for you.
Yeah.
Boy, that was really kind of a downer, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, you could give me some positives to learn too.
Yeah. Well, I know that I never worried about what tomorrow was going to be like for me. Even at times feeling down and getting fired and I don't know how I'm going to pay the electric bill, I just never really worried about it. And the older I got, the more I worried, and it always seems to work out. And I think if you're got that kind of mentality and you're not afraid to take a risk, and you have to take risks because opportunities, those are the risks that come your way. You can't say, well, you don't get to pick and choose. When those opportunities arise, just grab it. Just grab it. Go with your gut more than try to think through it.
How many countries have you been to?
Oh, not as many as you, Jim. But I've been to some of the most stunning countries, vacation spots on Iraq, border of Iran. I wanted to get
Did you ever do a remote from Israel or?
No, man, I really wanted. I went to Mexico though, the border there.
Okay.
Oh, that was stunning scenery there. A lot of plants that hurt you, and rape trees. You'd be amazed. They do exist, and these are victims of the. And this is back in the early 2000s, so I can only imagine it's much worse. But you'd see these trees, and they were full of women's bras and underwear. And the junk and the garbage was unimaginable. And I remember sitting down in the home of a rancher. He really was the Marlboro man. And he's got tears coming down his face. And he's pleading, please, somebody help us. I'm losing everything. And it just fell on deaf ears. And this is, I think, during the Bush administration. So this is
it's been going on for a while.
Right. This is nothing new. So it's you'd see the people coming across. I took a boat ride on the river down there, and they'd gather in the park or the wayside by the river, and then come across in bottles. And at that time, even then, they just, for the most part, were allowed to cross over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other than that, flying into Germany or England and things like that to get somewhere that isn't quite as pleasant. But I haven't traveled as much. Someday I'd like to, though. Jerusalem would be great.
How many presidents have you met?
I haven't met any in person, as a president, but, people who have certainly run for it and won or lost. Trying to think if I met with anybody who was a winner at the time. No, Bush I didn't. McCain was running. Romney, of course, and folks like that. And then, of course, I got to meet they'd have these radio rows at the White House. I think they're having one now with Trump. And this is where all the people who are on the bandwagon are invited. So you get to talk to all of the, Secretary of Defense and what have you. So we would do that on a regular basis. Go to the White House. Neil Bortz, remember him?
Yeah.
Yep. He took me in a side door, not to the White House, but I think right next door. And we got some White House folders and things like that. But you got to meet the other radio people, the Becks, the Hannitys, and all those folks on that level. But you also got to meet the movers and shakers at that time. And I learned and I was always in awe of them, Jim, because I always believed that they had our best interests and they were always smarter than the average person. And that's not true. It really isn't true. And I don't know. I've come to a more basic spot where I try not to envy or be in awe of anybody, because generally you'll be disappointed.
So who was the most impressive person you interviewed?
Wow.
Or talked to? Besides myself, of course.
Well, I know. And I'm trying to...
And Dr. Brannon.
Yes, both of you are extremely... I've had... Most of them are superficial interviews, and I really enjoy people who are willing to talk and really be honest and open. RFK was one of those people that I really enjoyed talking to. We, in this area, have all these wonderful universities, so you've had a lot of very, very smart people who oftentimes didn't agree with me, but I learned a lot from them. I like that. I love going to, like, the Raleigh Rescue Mission and the Durham Rescue Mission, because you'll meet people who are down on their luck, probably at the very bottom of the rung, and how they, through hope and belief in themselves and a higher being, take themselves from places you wouldn't think you could recover from. Those people I'm also quite amazed by. So it's ordinary folks that do extraordinary things.
Pretty cool.
How's that for a political answer, huh?
Yeah, I know,
should
man.
run for something.
You should start running for office. So what are your hot takes? When we do this hot take telecast, you're always asking me, and then we talk. So do you have any?
Oh, I just drove here. You want hot
Traffic?
takes? Traffic. What's wrong with these people that are over in the left-hand lane, Jim? I mean, God bless you all, truly. But when someone blinks your lights, and it's a polite way, that's just kind of a way to say, excuse me. That's what it is. It's not meant to enrage you. I don't need to see salutes with fingers and or a gesture, a gun gesture of any kind. Just move out of the way.
Yeah.
That stuff drives me crazy. That's one hot take.
I think people in their own little world sometimes. How can you not see the car behind you that's next to you, that's in your entire rearview mirror, and you're not moving over? I don't know. Sometimes maybe they're on the phone. I've seen people now, they're watching movies while they're driving.
Right.
So who knows what's going on.
Right. And now you're sitting in a traffic light and nobody moves because everybody's on their phone.
Right.
And so that's one. I'm trying to be a gentler and kinder and open-minded person and more loving, but growth around here is crazy, especially in the small communities. It seems as though go ahead and build, but let's not put any infrastructure in. So
right. More traffic.
Mm-hmm. I am pretty happy about the fact that we're trying to do something, whether it'll be successful or not, to bring jobs back here. I'm tired of having to do a drug search every 30 days for medication that's not available at the local pharmacy. It'd be nice to make medicine here. I'm really pumped about RFK as well. I think you're very into the health aspect of things. Let me ask you, how do you feel about him? I think what I've heard is kind of exciting.
I had two schools of thought. The first one was naive on my part because he's trying to change the entire system.
Right. I'm
like, why aren't we taking these vaccines off the list, especially the COVID vaccine for 6-month-old kids?
Right.
Instead, he's focused on red dyes and some other stuff. And then I'm not trying to defend him, but as you read more and more into it, it's just simply not that easy, to do some of the stuff because of the bureaucracy. So, I think he's a fighter. I believe in him.
Too.
And I think, hopefully in 4 years, hopefully the next administration keeps him on, but in 4 years, hopefully he can make a difference.
I don't know. Do you think we have the patience for all of this, all of the change.
No, I mean, look at the whole tariff thing a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Everybody lost their minds, within 3 days. And, but what I've learned about this country, well, I've known it, but kind of sadly reinforced itself all the time, is everybody knows it needs to be fixed, but literally nobody wants to sacrifice anything.
Right. Exactly.
And if their stock portfolio drops 10%, they go wild. It's like, this is the only small little price you have to pay. You already have probably millions of dollars in your portfolio. So you lost a couple $1,000,000 for that you'll probably make up in another year or two. It's on paper anyhow.
Right.
And you want to stop everything. You voted for a person because you knew it was broken and you thought they would hopefully fix it, but you're not willing to sacrifice that when you're okay if somebody goes to war someplace else on your behalf, right? It's like nobody wants to sacrifice anything.
Well, I think it's because they don't know. I don't know that most people understand what financial situation this country is really in and how dire it is. I don't know if they comprehend that. Our education system is just awful. Every time, about this time, every time budget comes around, you have teachers marching in the street and demanding more money and what have you. And I'm sure, there's a certain amount of that is legit, but I'm going, have you looked at the test scores? Have you looked at the test scores?
Yeah, I read somewhere yesterday that the senator from Maryland, I think, went down to El Salvador to hang out with the deported gang member.
Right.
Meanwhile, the city of Baltimore had 0 kids pass the math proficiency test for their grade level.
Right.
0. And he's going to worry about this guy in El Salvador, not the kids in his state. Like, what are we doing?
I don't know. I told you I was a big Superman fan, and I loved, they had the Bizarro series where it was Superman who looked like he was made out of ice, but everything was opposite. And that's kind of where I feel we're in. I mean, the priorities are really quite misplaced. And I don't know what's real, Jim, though, and what is manufactured. I mean, I see protests, and they can't possibly know what they're talking about because they wouldn't be protesting, I wouldn't think, right? So what's real, what isn't? I don't know. And unless you're educated, you won't know unless you do your own homework. And I've had a talk radio show. I do, probably 2 hours of prep for every hour I was on the air to try to, and the one thing, as you know, as a great interviewer, as you are, you try to know as much or more about the person so that you already kind of know the answers and can kind of correct the flow of things. And that's not happening anywhere that I see it, you know. Hannity's just a mouthpiece, and he's a good guy. He's really a good guy and a successful guy, but he's just a mouthpiece. So
he says the same things over and over again, too.
Very long.
But people watch him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, every night.
Well, people like to have their beliefs reaffirmed, right?
Yeah.
I had a guy, Dr. Michael Munger, brilliant guy. He's an economist at Duke University. And he was one of the guys that, can I tell this short story? I don't.
Yeah.
All right. 9/11 happened, and I was in Green Bay at that time. And there was a guy who had a gas station off the highway, and he was raising the prices. And I laid into him on the air, gouging these people, how dare you. The man, I made him, he was actually crying on the air. And this has stuck with me, but could not be more wrong, all right? And it was years later that Munger came into the studio, and he said they were passing a law for price gouging. And he said, that's insane. I said, what do you mean? We don't want people gouging. He said, no. Let me tell you, we had the hurricane come through. You had no ice. So you had out-of-state people come in with ice, and they were selling it for whatever, $20, $30 a bag, which was outrageous, right? Because normally it cost $1. So the state came in and took all the ice away. Now, if you had left it, that $20 bag would be $10 because more people would have brought ice in from other states. So, no, gouging has the opposite effect, and I never put that basic 1 + 1 = 2 together. And to this day, if I knew this poor man, I'd call him and I would apologize. But it's those kinds of moments you go back and go, God, I wish I was that smart. And I'm not.
It's a lesson learned. Do your research.
Always. Even as an individual, it's your family. Where are you sending your kid? What's going on in your school? There's a Supreme Court case right now where parents want control. What if they choose the wrong way and parents no longer have that? So there's a lot at stake. And it comes from people not being educated, which was by design. And I don't know, where our attention is on TikTok, social media? I don't know. We don't have long attention spans. By the way, next next show, I'm going to be talking about, that's what I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate, but it's just some of these things, Jim, drive me crazy.
Yeah. So in conclusion, 5 takeaways you want to give the audience.
In life in general?
Yeah. Anything
Well, I think we kind of touched on it. I think
touch on humility
and understand what really truly is important in life.
All right, so that's 2. So we got 3 more.
Yeah. If you have children in your life, it is your job to take care of them until you die. It's just, and you're responsible for not only their education, 2 + 2 in reading, but also their spiritual education. You're going to be held accountable for that, and urge you to really get yourself up to speed on that. And, just.
Is your definition of taking care, is that equipping them to handle downturns in life, or is that protecting them during the downturns in life?
Well, see, I have gone overboard, and I'm reforming myself. You can become overprotective and a helicopter parent. No, I think it's more of being there, knowing that they have this base, that you'll always be there for them. And of course, you will help them out in tough times, but you want to teach them to be able to handle it. And a lot of that is life experience. So you want to be there, not to hold their hand, but to maybe pat them on the back when they just giving them that security.
Sure.
Yeah. And then finally, understand that the left lane is for faster vehicles. Move over, be polite, and then you can go back over and watch your movie.
Where you live, you're a little bit closer to Virginia, and I think if you ever drove from here to D.C.,
oh God, yes,
the entire state of Virginia drives in the left lane, and so you're better off just staying in the right lane.
Good tip.
Yeah.
Wow, see?
You learn something.
You don't think there's anything worthwhile watching this show? I can't believe it. You get great tea and tips like that. Oh, DC's terrible. Yeah. It's just terrible.
Well, this is a treat. So,
I'm
learning
honored
more about you and your experiences.
Well,
and
whatever they are. And I appreciate you wanting to even hear it. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. 50cupstea.com. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks for joining us on Hot Takes 50 Cups. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to visit our website at 50cupstea.com for more great content and delicious organic teas, and listen and watch us on all the leading platforms. Stay connected with us on Instagram at 50cupstea, YouTube, and TikTok. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends. Until next time, keep sipping and stay united.